She banged on my door with the fury of a woman scorned, screaming that her guests had arrived and I was ruining her party by keeping my cabin locked, as if my private lake property was part of her backyard barbecue. I had come to the lake for peace. That cabin, tucked between the pines and a stretch of glistening water, was my sanctuary. I wasn't looking for drama. I wasn't trying to pick a fight, but apparently drama had a name, and it was Marlene. HOA, president, local tyrant, and self-declared queen of the lakeside community. Marlene strutted around as if the sun rose from her backyard deck and set behind her perfectly trimmed shrubs. She had been a problem since the day I bought the cabin, giving me sideways glances at HOA meetings, even though I technically wasn't under their jurisdiction. My property sat just outside the official HOA map, something she hated with the heat of 1,000 summer suns. The trouble began when I pulled into my gravel driveway on a quiet Friday morning. I had a week off work and a cooler full of steaks, expecting nothing more stressful than deciding between fishing or reading by the fire pit. I didn't even make it to the front porch before I noticed unfamiliar cars parked along the road. Luxury. SUVs with tinted windows lined the edge of the lake path. A banner that read, "Welcome Lakeview Retreat Guests" was strung up between two trees on my side of the water. I stared at it, blinked, and stared again. I knew the HOA occasionally hosted community gatherings, but this was new. Before I could ask any questions, Marlene materialized out of nowhere in a pastel blazer, clipboard in hand and sunglasses perched on her forehead like a general preparing for battle. She approached with a fake smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, good. You made it," she said as if we were on speaking terms. "Listen, I've got some guests staying this weekend. Little mix-up with booking the lodge. I told them we'd use your cabin for overflow. Hope you don't mind. Just unlock it and I'll handle everything." I thought she was joking. I laughed, waiting for her to join in. She didn't. "You what?" I asked. "Your place," she said, gesturing to my locked cabin like it was a spare garden shed. "Since it's just you, I figured you'd be flexible. It's such a lovely space, they only need it for 2 nights. We'll clean up afterward. Promise." That's when my patience snapped. "You figured wrong," I said coldly. "That's not happening." Her face shifted instantly, the fake smile dissolving into a sneer. I didn't give her a chance to argue. I pushed past her and unlocked the door myself, walking inside and closing it behind me. She stood outside, stunned, then stormed off like a cartoon villain denied her favorite color. The rest of that day blurred by in a strange, tense haze. I could hear laughter, music, and the hum of conversations drifting through the trees. Someone even tried to park in my driveway, and I had to come out and remind them it wasn't a shared space. They looked confused, like Marlene had told them otherwise. As the sun dipped and the sky turned gold, I heard rustling near the side of the cabin. I stayed perfectly still, listening. Metallic scraping. Someone was trying to break in. I tiptoed to the back window and peeked through the blind. 2 silhouettes crouched near the back door. One held something shiny. Bolt cutters. They were trying to force their way inside. My heart hammered. I flipped on the porch lights and hammered on the glass. They bolted like startled deer. I grabbed my phone and called the sheriff's office. Heart pounding, I explained what I saw. Half an hour later, a deputy arrived. But instead of checking the property or asking questions, he started with a sigh. "Sir, my Aunt Marlene tells me there's a misunderstanding here. Maybe you could be a bit more neighborly," he said, voice tired. "Neighborly? No, that means respecting boundaries," I snapped. "My property is private. Someone was trying to break in. I want it on record." He nodded but didn't write anything down. Instead, he said, "Well, I'll patrol around, but if they come back, call us again." I watched him leave, feeling the unease settle even deeper. The night grew quiet, but I stayed alert. Then I saw it. An orange tag taped to my cabin door. Violation notice. I crumpled it into my hand. It was fake. The HOA was trying to scare me again. The next morning, I found out how far they'd go. At the local diner, I overheard 2 women talking about their weekend retreat. One of them showed the other a photo of my cabin from a booking website. I felt my stomach tighten. Marlene had listed my cabin for rent, charging strangers to stay in my own property. I immediately checked the rental apps. Sure enough, there it was. Lakefront escape, with photos I had posted once on social media. She had stolen my pictures, turned them into a fake listing, and was pocketing the money. I took screenshots, saved every detail. That afternoon, I locked the gate across my driveway. I put up a sign. Private property, no trespassing. Marlene showed up again, face tight, with rage demanding I respect the community. I told her I'd respect the law. If she stepped on my porch again, I'd call the sheriff. She stormed off, but I knew this wasn't over. It was just the beginning. That night, I noticed movement near the side of the cabin. 2 silhouettes crouched. Near the garden, one holding something shiny. I quietly flipped on the porch light. They tried to hide, but I saw enough. Someone was tampering with my irrigation line, cut clean through. I immediately took photos, downloaded the footage, and sent it to my lawyer. Whatever they were doing, it wasn't accidental. It was sabotage. Over the next few days, the strange incidents kept piling up. Someone taped a fake preliminary acquisition zone notice on my gate, using county letterhead but with obvious errors. I took it down, took pictures, and sent it to the county. The official documents confirmed what I already knew. The land was outside HOA jurisdiction. I also found evidence that Marlene had been using her position to funnel money and favors. A contractor who worked on the community lodge came forward with a report. She owed him thousands, and he'd been ignored when he asked for payment. I added his statement to my growing folder. Meanwhile, neighbors I'd never spoken to before started coming by, sharing their own stories of her bullying. One woman told me Marlene once accused her father of hoarding junk because he parked his vintage motorcycle under a tarp. Others showed me proof of her rewriting meeting minutes, erasing votes that didn't favor her, or falsifying records. Then one morning I saw a new sign, laminated, taped to my gate. "Thank you for standing firm." I smiled. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. That same day, I received an invitation to a community board meeting, an official summons. I knew I had to be there. I gathered all my evidence, organized it carefully, and prepared to take a stand. When I arrived, the room was packed. Marlene was there, tense and pale. I laid out the folder of proof, screenshots of fake listings, tampered records, sabotage footage, testimonies from neighbors, and official documents proving I was outside the HOA's control. I explained how she had lied, cheated, and tried to steal my property for her own profit. I pointed out the clause in the old bylaws that allowed for her removal if she engaged in personal profiteering through misrepresentation. Her face blanched as I spoke. She tried to deny everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. Then, neighbors stepped forward and shared her own experience. How Marlene had forged minutes to erase a vote she didn't like. How she'd manipulated the community for years. Finally, the board members looked at each other and voted. The verdict was unanimous. Marlene was removed from her position, effective immediately. She left the room without a word, her face ghostly pale. The room was silent, but I felt a strange sense of relief. The nightmare was ending. The fake violations, the false claims, the harassment, all of it was falling apart. And as she walked out, I knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where truth and justice finally stood tall on the lake. The land was mine again, and I was finally free. She stormed away, her face twisted in fury, but I didn't bother chasing her. I just stood there, heart pounding, watching her disappear into the trees like a shadow fleeing the dawn. The fake, violation notices, the sabotage, the rental scam, they all had one thing in common: Marlene's desperate attempt to hold on to her power. But I knew the truth was finally slipping free from her grasp. Suddenly, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket. I pulled it out, heart racing, and saw a text from an unknown number. "You think the battle is over? You're just getting started." My stomach clenched. That wasn't a prank. It was a warning, clear, cold, and deliberate. I looked around, trying to spot anyone lurking nearby. The woods seemed silent, but I could feel eyes watching. Every shadow, every rustle suddenly felt alive with threat. I moved quickly to my cabin, locking the door behind me, and stared at the message again. Who was sending it? And what did they mean by just getting started? A sudden knock at the back door made me jump. My pulse thundered. I peeked through the peephole. Nothing. Silence. Then, faintly, I heard a whisper, almost inaudible, like someone trying to hide their voice. I froze as a piece of paper fluttered onto the porch in front of me, carried by the breeze. I bent down and picked it up. It was a note, written in hurried handwriting. You've uncovered too much. Now they're coming for you. No signature. Just dread. I clenched my fists. I'd fought her fake notices, her lies, her scams, but this was something new. Something darker. Someone out there was watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. Marlene's tactics were nothing compared to what was truly at stake now. I moved to the windows, peering into the shadows beyond. My mind raced. What could they want? Why had they warned me? And most importantly, how much further would Marlene go to keep her grip? I knew I had to act fast. Whatever was coming, I needed to be ready. The fight was far from over. It was only just beginning. I watched her stumble out of the room, her eyes wide with shock and fury, and I knew I had finally pushed her too far. The room was silent now, except for my ragged breathing and the distant hum of the lake beyond. I had the evidence, more than enough to end her reign of terror, and I knew the moment to strike was coming. But I also knew that Marlene wouldn't go down quietly, not without fighting back with everything she had left. Suddenly, my phone exploded with notifications. I hurriedly unlocked it, heart pounding, and saw dozens of messages flooding in, texts, emails, even messages from neighbors I'd never spoken to. They all had one thing in common, proof that Marlene's schemes had been far worse than I'd realized. She'd been forging documents, spreading false rumors, and even paying off people to lie for her. The evidence was piling up faster than I could process. Then came the call I'd been waiting for. The sheriff's deputy's voice was calm but firm. "We've got enough to arrest her," he said. "But we need your help. She's planning something tonight, something big. You need to be ready." My stomach tightened. I had suspected as much. Marlene was cornered now, desperate to cling to her power, even if it meant risking everything. I looked out the window. The lake was dark, the moon casting a silver glow over the water. I could barely breathe, knowing she was out there somewhere, probably trying to pull her final twisted move. Then I heard it. A faint sound, like footsteps approaching. I froze. My hand trembled as I reached for the flashlight. Slowly, I crept toward the door, peeking out through the curtain. Nothing, just shadows, but I knew better. I could feel her presence lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike back. Suddenly, the power flickered off. Darkness swallowed everything. Heart pounding, I fumbled for my phone to turn on the flashlight. That's when I saw her. Standing on the dock, silhouetted against the moonlight, clutching something shiny in her hand. Her eyes glinted with madness. "Did you really think it would end like this?" she hissed, voice trembling with rage. "You think you've won? You've only made me mad." Before I could move, she threw whatever she was holding, something metallic, into the water. It sank with a loud splash. My mind raced. What was that? A weapon? A trap? Then everything changed. The water rippled, and from the depths, a strange glow emerged, blue and pulsating. It wasn't just the reflection of the moon. No, it was something else, something unnatural. I took a step back, heart pounding harder than ever. Suddenly, a low rumble vibrated through the ground. The lake trembled as if it was alive, responding to that strange glow. Marlene screamed, backing away. "You don't understand. You don't know what you've unleashed," she yelled, voice cracking with panic. In that instant, the water erupted. Something massive burst up from beneath the surface, a dark, swirling whirlpool of light and shadow. It was like the lake had turned into a portal, a gateway to something beyond understanding. I froze, staring in horror. Then from the chaos a figure emerged, half human, half shadow, staring at us with glowing eyes. It was impossible, yet undeniable. The legend I'd heard as a kid, the one about the lake's secret power, was real. Marlene's scream echoed as she tried to run, but she was frozen in place, eyes wide with terror. The creature advanced, and I knew I had one choice: run or face whatever this was. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the only thing I could, an old rusted boat paddle I kept for emergencies, and swung it wildly. It was useless against something that seemed to bend reality, but I had to try. The creature paused, then reached out with a shadowy hand. I felt a coldness seep into my bones, like the very night was trying to swallow me whole. My vision blurred, and for a moment I thought I'd be pulled into that abyss. But then a blinding flash of light erupted from the water. The creature shrieked and recoiled, the glow intensifying until it was all I could see. I covered my eyes, shielding myself. When I finally looked again, everything was gone. No creature, no whirlpool, just the lake, calm and still under the moon. The silence was deafening. Marlene was gone too. Her screams had vanished, replaced by a strange, peaceful quiet. I stood there, trembling, trying to catch my breath. I realized that whatever that was, the lake's secret, the shadow creature, it had been awakened by her greed and her lies. And now, it was gone, or so I thought. But as I turned to go inside, I noticed something strange. A faint, glowing footprint near the water's edge. It shimmered, faint, but undeniable. I reached out and touched it. It was cold, strange, like touching the surface of a star. And then I understood. The lake hadn't just fought back. It had chosen me to be its guardian. The real battle wasn't over. It had only just begun, because some secrets don't stay buried. Some shadows cling forever. And the lake, with all its dark, mysterious power, had just revealed that it was far more alive and far more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined.